Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I suspect some of you out there in podcast land listening to my voice beaming directly into your earballs are also multitasking by endlessly scrolling down a social media site and maybe hoping to learn something from an expert that you can retain and apply in your world too, and learn how other people are solving problems. At least that was always my plan for this podcast. And one of the big reasons why I'm so excited to get today's guest, Darja Gutnick, onto the podcast. Because I read on Forbes that she is a psychologist gone rogue who quit her PhD to start her first company. And now she's a third-time founder. And after having worked for big corporate companies such as BMW and being a researcher in the field of organisational innovation, as well as a strategy consultant and leadership coach, she's now on a mission to change the way we develop a new generation of leaders. And Bunch recently released Bunch, the AI leadership coach, which you can get on your smartphone. And essentially, the app enables users to become better leaders in just 2 minutes a day. But I wanted to find out more about the science of leadership. Can anyone become a great leader? And the role that technology can play in that. And also hoping to hear a few stories around female entrepreneurship and lessons that she learned along the way. So if you are interested in the role that technology can play in making you a better leader and how leadership is actually a mindset that can be learned and not some hidden talent that we need to discover, you should love today's episode. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New York, where Darja Gutnick is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hey everyone, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Darja, and I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Bunch that delivers leadership coaching via AI technology to the new generation of leaders.
Excellent. I want to find out a lot more about Bunch in a few moments. But before we do, how did you get here? What's your origin story and where did your passion for technology and leadership come from? How did those worlds collide? There's got to be a story there, right?
A little bit. I mean, I was interested in humans from like the very beginning, or in the human side of things. But I think I studied organizational psychology because I grew up with a entrepreneurial mom who was great at customer experience and developing business. She really understood customer value as like an emotional concept that she felt inside of her when it was there and when it wasn't. But she always struggled very much with the team building side of things. So she really struggled hiring the right people, finding them, keeping them. And so that inspired me, I think, to kind of try and find a solution for that, because I felt it can't be that of a magic box, like it probably is very resolvable. And so it seems like my mom was really lacking frameworks or kind of like mental models that really, really worked. And so that inspired me to go into that direction. And once I did that, I mean, kind of forward skipping, I worked for corporates in like HR strategy type of roles, also had a stint in academia. And to name an example, BMW was like my first real employer after all the internships. But after that, I went into academia and consulting. So first consulting and then academia. And when I was researching for my PhD papers, I kind of was really trying to drill down on the creative performance under pressure and the impact of leadership. So that brought me then to entrepreneurship, because obviously founders are constantly under pressure, as I can attest to now myself. And they have to come up with creative solutions to stuff. And sometimes leadership can be a resource, but sometimes it can also be a hindrance. And I really wanted to find out why that is, to then, going back to the original problem I wanted to solve, to help leaders that are building their businesses, building teams, etc., to step up in a more effective way and help all of us factually move forward. Because I do think that if a team works really well together, that can make a huge difference on like a world level, actually, depending on the problem they're working on, of course. So that's kind of the story. And when I was researching during my PhD times, I worked with founders indirectly. So I started to do research with founders, basically asking them questions, putting them in like semi-experiments and things like this, and understood that many things that bugged me about academia and worried me about my own future. I was quite good at it, like I got awarded and things, but I never felt really at ease about my future prospects of staying in academia because it was very slow and very elitist, and the knowledge wasn't very accessible. And pulling back to my original problem, my mom would have never found out about all these things that we're researching on because she would have never had access to these like scientific papers that we're publishing in these like funny journals that no one even knows about that exist and all of this. So that was bothering me a lot. And I basically, when I kind of when my world collided with the tech entrepreneurial world, I realized this may be where I can actually find my home. And this is maybe where I can really find my own personal and realize my own personal mission as well, because it was much faster. It's much more open to innovation in a dirty way, meaning like fast, fail, trial and learn and kind of take it from there. You don't have to figure it all out before you get into action. That was very much in line with like how my mom operated as well. But at the same time, it was very there were a lot of nerds, right? Like it was a very knowledge-driven industry in that sense, and so that spoke to me as an academic a lot. And so I kind of like saw this opportunity that I just wanted to be more exposed, and I made a lot of friends in that area, and so on and so on. And one time I went to one of these like pitch competition things, you know, that you have in this very early stage startup ecosystem where you just have people on stage pitching some random ideas, and then some like more experienced people, maybe with some money, give them some feedback on this and so on. So I found myself by chance in one of these events because I was doing research there, and I had business ideas in like a little book written down, and I pitched one of them just like to try out how it feels and things. And we actually were quite successful because we actually got the first 25K or so in like angel money for this like random idea. And I at one of a sudden found myself at this intersection of like, do I pursue my PhD? Do I give this up or pause it now and then try this like random thing that I just pitched on the stage? And I ended up doing the random thing. It was a very difficult decision, but I ended up doing my first startup in the space of travel. It helped connecting travelers that didn't have like local language skills with like very cool local offerings. It was that time before like Airbnb activities was around or Get Your Guide. And we developed this database that was basically matching travelers with activities, tours, events, and so on. And the rest is history. And then a little bit after that, there were more stations, but like came Bunch. But this is kind of my journey of how I ended up in the tech space.
Wow, what an incredible story. And it was that path that led you to Bunch, which is, at the moment, it's on a mission to help anyone become a better leader in just 2 minutes a day, which sounds incredibly intriguing. So can you tell me a little bit more about them?
Absolutely. I mean, so when I stopped my first startup, so I was building it for 1.5 years in South America, and then I returned back to Europe, and I basically kind of had one of these like funny break phases, you know, that founders have sometimes. Like you kind of have to like rest a little, but you still kind of course want to work. So, and you're kind of looking for the next thing that you want to work on. And so in that time, I did a team leadership certification because I was noticing already as a CEO back then myself, but also working with other founders that like the team struggle is still real. Like everyone is my mom. And I'm like, that was like a good topic. We need to get back to that because also there is not a lot of people that are doing this. And like these founders need support and help. And so I started kind of doing this just out of like, I don't want to say passion, but like I felt almost like support. Like I felt they lack resources and they have like funny challenges that I also could relate to, but like that needed a little bit of investigation of like how to approach, like how to structure this meeting, how to approach this decision, how to do this. And I started actually collecting resources on this topic as a consultant. Was consulting in different projects, but kind of started to zoom in to this like team performance type of situation. And then I did the certification because I had more hunger for like more deeper level knowledge. And basically started to be a leadership coach, specialized from this like early stage founder segment. Worked with really cool clients, one of which was N26, probably now you may know about them. It's a challenger bank based out of Berlin, but I think they're pretty global now. And so when I started working with them, they were 25 people, and the founder team had like the first few hires of VPs around them, and they tried to figure out how to like be a team now and like lead this company forward. And when working with these type of customers back then, this was like 2017, I noticed that the preferences of how these people learn are very different from like how we used to do this in the past, right? So during my internships, I also worked with a few leadership trainers and leadership coaches. That's what you do when you're like a psychologist in the business world. And all I did was preparing workshops all the time. And so I also offer that in the beginning of my own career as a consultant or as a coach. And notice that they don't need that type of thing. They want something more continuous. They want something that's lighter weight. Scheduling these workshops is very difficult. It's almost impossible. Then there were time zones. And it was like back then already, like, I mean, now it's, we're on Zoom all the time. But like back then, it was already very difficult for the most innovative companies to buy into that idea that you have to sit somewhere for a day and then consume knowledge passively. And then that's how you will become better at building a team. So they did not want to sign up for that. And their head of product, actually, who's our product strategy advisor still, was a gamer. So he would like loved table games and board games and stuff like that. And he basically was kind of always with him. We were kind of always trying to huddle this out. Like, how can this type of knowledge be delivered in a much more interactive, lightweight, engaging way? Like, there has to be a way. And so again, fast forward to where we are today, where Duolingo is like a very common way to learn a language, right? Like, you don't need to explain anymore. Why would you download an app to learn a language? A lot of people do that, millions. But at that time, it was still in the beginning where like the edtech sector just entered that realm of we can do things with digital. We can use technology to deliver knowledge and to train it. And of course, intersections with humans in between are useful and it's helpful. However, we can do so much more with technology than what we do. Like, it's not enough to just like put PowerPoint presentations and see that's like the best use we can have, So the field was very, very early. And I feel right now it's catching up a lot. Like, there's so much innovation in the edtech space, but back then it was very much in the beginnings. And so effectively, Bunch grew out of my consultancy. And so like I kind of took my stepping stones towards having an AI coach app, actually, where there is like a machine learning based backend and an app front end. The steps in between were things like email courses. And then I started to curate lists, and then I built like a database. And so every time a client has a specific question, I kind of had my like little directory type of thing where I like went and pulled out the resources. So I personally never saw myself as someone who is like in the, room and kind of tries to do this, like the research in isolation, like the lone genius or whatever. I always felt my contribution to the field and like how I could help my mom eventually is to actually allow access and connect her to the resources that exist today and make them so that she can consume them, and that my customers at that time can consume them in a good way. And so I think that's in the end at the core of what Bunch is today. It's we curate at scale to make it so that anyone in the world that faces a challenging situation at work or is not sure how to resolve a specific conflict and so on has access at a tap of a finger to the best resources out there. And of course, by the way, also discovers great content creators and thought leaders in that space, discovers great content, follow those people, and kind of starts learning more and more in depth about the topic. But I think our magic moment is really that situation where you as a team lead or as anyone at work, really, like, your mind boggled with the situation you have with your boss or with your direct report or your colleague, and you kind of don't know where to go and you don't know what to do, and you don't have a lot of people to ask. And that's where Bunch is there for you 24/7.
I absolutely love it. I love the concept behind it. It's one of the reasons I started this podcast as well, was to try and get people from all over the world in a variety of backgrounds to talk about business problems and how technology is solving it, but in a language that everyone can understand. And it really is invaluable. And to this podcast today, we'll have people listening from all over the world. And it is a big question, but what would you say the science of leadership is? And do you think that anyone could be a great leader with the right mindset and resources at their disposal?
I think the science of leadership is a huge field. So I kind of don't want to fall into a rabbit hole, but I think the parts that maybe are worth looking at for the listeners, I'm sure you probably already heard about from some of them. And also kind of the competencies. We have a competency model actually underlying the recommendations we do in Bunch as well. So the competencies that are kind of sticking out up top. The fields to look into that are relevant nowadays, I think, when we talk about leadership, are definitely concept of servant leadership. I think term coined like 25 years ago, but like as hot as ever. The emotionally intelligent leader, I think that's like definitely a concept that is, if those that listen haven't looked into it much yet, definitely worth looking into it. Overall, I think the field of leadership science has moved on from like questions like, does charisma really help? Of course, it does help. It's one resource, but like there's so many more. To much more nuanced questions around how do we build truly inclusive teams? Difficult question, very, very difficult. Like highly complex. There's so much research on fault lines, diversity in the workplace. It's like many, many years, but how to actually, boil it down to like accessible, simple, like what's the tip here? Like, what do I do now? That's like very tricky. So I think that more recent topics are more around how we actually can enable collaboration in a better way, much more than about the individual itself as a leader. So the leader becomes a concept, a set of behaviors that can be actually carried forward by anyone in the team, really. It doesn't need to be the formal authority in the room. It can be absolutely anyone who steps up in that moment. So also this concept of situational leadership plays a huge role for us as well, obviously. And so to your second question, can anyone really be a leader? If they want to, absolutely. So there is no limitation for you not to step up and take responsibility and impact yourself and others in a positive way and move a team forward, unless you don't want to do that. And if you don't want to, that's also completely fine. Like, I think the tricky part, or what I discuss often with also our users, is that there is a difference between management and leadership. Obviously, management is like the official, authoritative position in a company to like help coordinate work, ease up decision making, et cetera, et cetera. There's many functions. And leadership is a more transient like concept that is really, I think, becoming more and more of a mindset type of concept, where if you manage to really exert that positive influence on others, and they're ready to follow you and like kind of look up to you and really ask you for advice, or take you as a role model, or just analyze your behavior to see whether they like can learn anything from you. Like all these type of dynamics typically indicate a leader. And so we know this in science since many years, that oftentimes the people that have the authoritative, like formal leadership position, the manager, don't necessarily have the biggest power in the room. They're often hidden leaders, like the people that socially influence groups, that oftentimes have support position of some sort. I had just one example actually where I know someone who is an agile coach right now and used to be like a tech IC, so an individual contributor in a tech team, and built a really good relationship with the CEO. And the CEO wasn't like that present because the company grew, of course. And so the engineering team was more and more autonomous in that sense. And there was a CTO as well, but that person was effectively steering and influencing the day-to-day of these people. And so then he was promoted into a team lead sort of position in that sense. So when companies pick up on there is leading happening, we can promote that into formal authority. That's typically when like these two things align, and that results in a very good thing for the company and the team, but they're not necessarily the same. And so our mission with Bunch is to help that person, in this case, this now agile coach and team lead, to realize that they can do this and that there is things to learn for them. So they don't need to always kind of stay in the shadows and kind of, try to like talk to people and make things happen, but they can actually step up, can receive promotions, they can receive formal leadership positions as well. But it comes with a set of behaviors that they need to learn. It's not something that is given to them just because they may be good with like building relationships with people. There is a set of things that you kind of need to acquire in order to navigate that space in an organization successfully. And so that's what Bunch is there for.
Love that. And one of the things I love about recording this podcast again is we're having a conversation today. There's 3,500 miles between us, but technology's made that possible to broadcast this conversation from everywhere to Chicago to Calcutta, and people could be sat on a bus somewhere and learning from that. And from what you're doing here, what role does technology play in how you help people become better leaders?
It's really interesting because, as you know, the company name is also Bunch.ai, right? Like the machine learning technology piece was always very important for us. It was kind of there from the beginning. We always joke around and say we are a content company powered by AI, which is not untrue. We are a content company, but I want to kind of emphasize the role of user experience and technology in that sense, because I think oftentimes these big technology words like AI and others, everyone understands that's kind of important. It's the future, and like there will be something with it, and like whatever. I mean, the normal person on the street doesn't necessarily need to understand all the different machine learning models that we train or use or whatever. However, I think we sometimes underestimate or overlook the most basic parts of technology. Just as you pointed out right now, this is a Zoom call. Like this is internet broadband type of situation, and that allows us to have a conversation, and that carries forward so many like different solutions and use cases. And I think in our case, the AI bit or the recommendation bit is an important one for sure, and I don't want to downplay it, but nobody like typically asks me about like, what about the app, or how do you make sure that the content is consumable? And to be fair, we had a very interesting year last year where we upgraded the product from like an MVP product to an actual like solid beta, I would say, that could scale beyond like 20, 30,000 users and so on. And we went through quite a lot of rough patches with tech debt. And I really like the hard way as a product leader and as a company leader needed to learn how important it is to not overlook the like simple things in technology. So things like infrastructure, or also things like what type of stack do you actually have? And then are your engineers proficient in it? Is there enough resources by the community already? So we, for instance, included a very new language. We wrote the iOS app in the beginning in Swift UI instead of UI Kit, which is like the established one, because, we're a startup, we can do new things, like we're not afraid. But then we noticed, this has a lot of limitations on how the experience is in the app. And consumers nowadays expect a very high level of user experience, rightfully so. I totally get it. But like our users don't care whether we are 10 people or 1,000. Our experience needs to be as good as Spotify's or Netflix's or even better. And so we need to find ways how to deliver that at scale with just having like very limited resources. And decisions around who works in which stack, how do they work together, what technology do you use for delivering that user experience? Anyone who is in the tech business, like I can only urge to really think about this and really try to find out as much as possible from your tech people on the team, whether it's your tech leader, tech co-founder, anyone who understands it, like have dialogues and conversations about what type of technology enables you to do what. And I think many founders I am in touch with learn that the hard way, including me. And I kind of wish like that weren't necessary. But so to round it up, technology in our case enables us to deliver the right advice and the right piece of content for the user at any given moment in time. And it does that with a recommendation technology in the backend, but it also does that with like a very smooth, good user experience on the iOS app and in the future on other platforms. And I think that second part is actually kind of often in the shadows, but it's very, very important and very tricky to get right.
It really is. And if we look back a few years ago, it almost felt like discovering the future leaders was about exploring hidden talent that we needed to go out there and discover. So I love how you've kind of removed that problem. And we're talking today about how science, technology, and the right mindset can help people learn leadership. So just to bring all that to life, is there a use case of Bunch, or just walk me through how people use the platform and get the most out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two clear use cases, kind of like the typical one is our users want to build a learning habit about where they can consume content that helps them to be better at their work, right? And the challenge they face is that the current solutions that are out there are mostly long form and they don't have so much time, and they're also not well curated. So in order for you to learn, you actually need to have a mini operation where you go through Substacks, Mediums, podcasts, and books and all of that, and you curate your own list somehow to then read long form content and listen to long form content. And that's the part that we are basically making it easier for them. So again, we're not the ones that like produce all the content, right? So a typical way how you could use Bunch after onboarding it is that you get a tip recommended every morning. It's really only 2 minutes. You can listen to it or you can read through it. The reading part is really like kind of a baby between like a Blinkist and Instagram story. So it's like a few pages that you can tap through easily. And then in the end, you do have deep dive links. So if we have a conversation and there's a tip that is related to something we talk about, we would be linked in that tip. And so the user can still go and enjoy a long form content, right? It's very important to understand we're not against long form content. However, most people at work right now are in back-to-back meetings between 6 to 16 hours every day. And they simply don't have the time to do that research and to like line up that curated list and so on and so on. So that's what we do for them. And typically they use this in the morning. And I think depending on the topic, like how relevant it is, how timely it is for you, we have user feedback continuously saying like, I really enjoy the deep dives. I really see like if a topic interests me more, I actually save it for later and I come back to it in the evening. But the psychological effect of just having done your portion of learning in the morning already, when you do meditation or sports or whatever, is really helpful for the kind of new generation in the workplace to feel clear and confident. There's lots of imposter syndrome going on for other reasons I don't want to dive into. There's lots of insecurity about how to like, exert impact and like how to behave. And the intergenerational thing is also not so easy often. And so what Bunch does for these people by giving them this portion that is controllable, clear, actionable, very tangible, is to give them that feeling that they own their day and that they kind of, made their bed in that sense. Like the day only started, they haven't had a meeting yet, but they already learned something and it's something that they could apply. And the other use case is, which is less frequent, but very, very important, I think, for our users, is when you have a tricky situation. And to give you an example, yesterday I was preparing a roadmap review session for the team, and we have ambitious milestones and we need to achieve them. And so I was trying to like wrap my head around by like, how can I help them to build commitment towards this picture? Like, how can we get there? And then I was realizing like, wait a minute, like Bunch, okay, let's look, building commitment. And I found a tip on visualizing success. And so I took like 3 questions that were suggested there, implemented them and run with it. And I think these situations where our customer loyalty is built, like if we are truly there for that user in that moment, they really consider that being like their, sidekick, so to say, or it's like the resource that they can always count on. And so that's, I would say, the typical use case, the morning learning portion, and then the on-demand success kicker.
And I love that early morning learning side of it, because I think for most people listening, they've probably wasted an hour to 90 minutes every morning just endlessly scrolling down Facebook, Instagram or TikTok videos. And if you ask anyone what they learned during that 90 minutes, for most part, people can't even tell you what they were looking at for 90 minutes. So it seems like such an easy life hack, really, but to actually learn something during that time, whether it be on the commute or wherever you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. We actually started to develop the product in very, very early concepts in like mid-2020, I think, beginning mid-2020. And obviously, COVID was just kind of like happening. And so the original idea was actually exactly that, is your learning portion for the commute. And so we started with audio actually originally, and then went into the visual experience, like the reading mode, because COVID was all of a sudden happening. We're all at home and we're like, we're not commuting anywhere between the kitchen and the bedroom, but that's not enough time. So maybe we need to give them a visual experience. And now the read mode is like the most successful. There's 30% of people are listening and 70 are reading. But it's an interesting kind of anecdote that originally that was the idea, to give it on commute.
Oh, man, that's brilliant. And I'm curious, as a female in entrepreneurship and technology, what kind of lessons and obstacles and challenges or anything, is there anything that you can share about what you've learned along the way on your journey?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think a tricky topic for me, also a little bit emotional, because I think it's just so frustrating to see that we're not making progress. I'm like very tired of reading reports every year where the numbers of funding that goes to female entrepreneurs goes down instead of up. I think supporting each other is very important. So the call out to all other women and let's say non-male genders, I think we're in the same boat in many ways, is definitely to be mindful of providing and extending support. It's really, really important. And I still sometimes see and feel that that's not always happening for some reason. But I think my biggest thought around this topic recently is, we have to do this together with our male colleagues. If we don't get them in the room, and I think it was kind of, I came up with this thought when I was thinking about the International Women's Day. There was a lot of criticism this time around because a lot of women feel similarly. I think they're like, we've done this many years now. What does that really bring? Like, is this a social media campaign type of thing? Or like, what is behind this really? And I think the most important takeaway I understood from these discussions around the 8th of March this year was that if we don't have a common conversation between our male colleagues, partners, sons, fathers, like the direct people around us, not just, the political type of layer, but like the personal layer, if we don't speak to these people about the topic and really like express how we feel and actually rally allyship and ask for it and really basically say like, hey, this is not a theoretical topic for me. This is real. I have a lot of disadvantages in many different situations. I'm very tired of it. I don't want to do this anymore. I need your support. I think this like very clear call out, here is how you can support me. And I want you to support me. Like, you have to make a decision now, whether you want to or not. I think this is my kind of piece of advice, is to ask for help as a female in tech, because it's not going to go away otherwise. And I really feel there is this like effect of a bubble in a way. Like a lot of us, including also females, are still looking at this perspective or at this topic from a rather theoretical perspective almost. And like, unless it really hits home and they have a daughter or a partner that comes home and tells them, hey, I was like sexually harassed at work, or like something else really bad happened to me, I think people don't like really wake up and nothing really changes. So I think we need to turn that around, and instead of waiting until these trigger events happen, we really need to fight for allyship, I believe. And so, yeah, that would be my advice, is like, fight for your allyship. Don't expect it to happen, because it's not going to.
Fantastic advice. And I've got to ask you also, what makes you jump out of bed in the morning? What excites you about how people are increasingly collaborating with technology to unlock hidden abilities rather than competing with tech? Because we often see how businesses will put tech solutions in place at the expense of people. But for me, it's always been around together. That's where the magic happens. But is there anything in particular that stands out for you?
Definitely empowering. I'm with you. Yes. Two things. For me personally, user feedback keeps me going, positive and negative, because negative is like, it reminds me there's still work to be done. And then it gives me a clear direction. I'm like, okay, cool, sense of purpose. And positive because it is, of course, also validating, right? Like, we just started another campaign where we're asking our users and doing a bunch of interviews and listening to them, like how it helps them to navigate their career. Many people literally just write us describing how it has propelled their career, like how it has helped them to take that next steps and so on. And that really binds me as a person to that topic and that company as well. So, when you're in the journey for a long time, you kind of have these moments where like, okay, cool, the first 2 years are over. Like, am I still doing this or what? What's the reason? Because it also is very hard, of course, as we probably those that do entrepreneurship know, there's very, very many deep points and very challenging moments, but you need to get over them. And then you have these like honest questions to yourself, like, are we still in this? And we had this conversation with my co-founder as well. And what motivates me is that I understand this is the right thing for me to do. Like, it's really related to my personal mission. This is where I can help. This is where I can make a difference for many people in the world. And so technology for me allows me to extend my impact, because otherwise I would be doing what I'm doing as a coach, and then I could reach a few thousand people. In my coaching times, I think I overall coached 1,500 founders in different cohorts as well, with accelerators and so on. But like, it was a good amount. However, I was very close to burnout most of the years because I was overbooking days, as you know, maybe as a consultant, like, you're not supposed to book more than half of your days in like workshops and stuff. But like, I was doing, 75%. And it just felt like no matter how hard I do and how many people I hire and how many like workshops I book for them, we will never reach everyone who needs our help, because we will not know about when that is. We won't be available. There is time zones and all that stuff. So technology cut through all that noise for me and actually helped me to see a path forward, how we can have designers and developers in Nigeria and give them that type of content and give them advice in a situation where they're struggling. And otherwise we would have never worked together. Like, there's just not, I don't think that would have happened. So for me, this is a really good tool to multiply and kind of expand impact of an idea or a concept or a service that is otherwise not possible. So there is definitely negative sides to technology as well and how we use it. And it's tricky, I think. But I believe that there is so many advantages that we can take advantage of. And like the scalability aspect is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I'm not sure if the Earth is spinning faster on its axis now or I'm just getting old, but it feels like only a couple of weeks ago we were celebrating the arrival of 2022 and somehow we now find ourselves entering April. So I've got to ask, what's next for Bunch? And is there anything you can share about how you're going to continue to leverage technology and improve what you're doing?
Absolutely. So actually, one of the parts that is super, super exciting for us this year is we're making the learning experience of our users social. We already built a very vivid community around the product that is helping in the moments where the content can't do that anymore. So like the content ends at one point, right? And then there is like a human conversation that is needed to really like push through the complexity of a problem. And so that's when our community of users comes in. Currently, we're learning it on Slack. There's 2,500 people in there, and they ask questions, they help each other. There is AMAs and all sorts of stuff. But we're now bringing these type of features actually inside of the app. So in the future, you'll be able to not only learn from content that Bunch delivers to you, but actually from other Bunch users. And to figure that out was really interesting and tricky, but a good challenge. But we, I think, found it now. So like after months and months of validation and research and design, we have like very clear path forward and now starting to build it. And it's super exciting. So that's the next layer of technology enablement that we are able to access, right? Is that we have 55,000 of users all around the world. And in the future, you'll be able to be connected to some of them depending on your topic of interest and what you're currently learning about and so on. So that's a really, really exciting move for us.
Wow, sounds like you've got an exciting few months ahead. And we started the podcast talking about your origin story, how you got here. Now we've come full circle. It's now time to ask you if you would leave the listeners with a personal touch of inspiration by maybe sharing either a book that has inspired you or maybe have a go-to song that you get in your head to get your head in the zone, or a song that's just important to you. But what are you going to leave us with today? And is there a story to accompany your choice?
Super good question. I'm definitely a book nerd. I also like music, but I'm going to go with a book. For those of you that are building digital products and like more the businessy type of literature, I can highly recommend the Cold Start book by Andrew Chen, which just came out and is maybe not as like widely known beyond the like startup nerd ecosystem. A very powerful book. It basically dissects how the most successful products we know today, Uber, Netflix, and the likes, PayPal's and so on, made their thing happen. Like there is a playbook to this, and it's good to understand whether you're building a product or not. It's also good to understand from a user perspective what is like the rationale of these companies and why they're doing specific things. On a personal note, I read, and I know it's been criticized somewhat in the media, I read American Dirt not so long ago, which is telling a story of people migrating from South America into the US, like the non-legal, so to say, I don't know whether that's really a term because it is legal, of course, but like that are making the hard journey from South and Central America into the US when fleeing hardship. And it really moved me. I think also what we see with the Ukraine crisis right now and like all the refugees that are pouring into Berlin and into Europe in general, into all the adjacent countries. I think it's a very, very timely perspective. And I can highly recommend immersing yourself in a journey of a refugee because it is really still so present and so relevant today. And I really hope that by reading it, it will open up your mind and eyes to like helping more, supporting more, opening your doors for people that are on the journey. And really moved me.
Wow, it sounds like an incredibly important book. So I'll get both of those added to our Amazon wish list. But I suspect we'll have two types of people listening. We'll have leaders that want to get themselves on Bunch and also people that want to learn from Bunch. So what's the best way of finding out how they can do either of those things or even contacting your team?
Absolutely. So, and the easiest way is to go into the App Store and actually look for Bunch Leadership and download the app. It's free. You can check it out and take it from there. You'll meet the team when you do that. You'll have onboarding communication from us and things like that. Also, I think following us on Twitter and LinkedIn is really valuable because we're also sharing lots of resources for those channels. And if you want to spar on anything, startups, entrepreneurship, leadership, technology, and so on, feel free to get in touch with me as well, of course. And you can find me with my name, Darja Gutnick. It's with a J on Twitter and LinkedIn both. And I'm pretty responsive on both. So looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Well, I'll get all those links added to the show notes so people can find you nice and easy. Loved hearing more about your story today, the great work you're doing with technology. I always say that technology works best when it brings people together. And I love how you're bringing in this expertise around leadership from all around the world and solving real problems in real time for people. And anything that stops people endlessly scrolling down TikTok and Instagram each morning has got to be a great thing. So thanks for sharing that with me today.
Yeah, and super, super good conversation. Thank you so much for all the questions. And yeah, really, really enjoyed our time together as well.
Wow, what a great conversation. And I think that could have quite easily gone on for another 30 minutes. And if anybody listening downloads Bunch and checks out this AI leadership coach, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on it. And that is if you just want to become a better leader, or if you're a leader yourself that wants to go on the platform. I'd love to hear your experiences around it. But what a great origin story from today's guest. Absolutely love that. But over to you. Please, I want to hear your insights and experiences. You can share your thoughts. Email techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes. And my website, if you'd like to work with me and browse through 2,000 other interviews, simply go to techblogwriter.co.uk. But you guessed it, we're out of time again. Where does the time go? It seems like we're spinning through life at 1,000,000 miles an hour right now, doesn't it? But I'll return again tomorrow. I'll be back in your podcast feed before you know it. So thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.